usual way we start this conversation, Meher, is always to ask whether it was intentional or accidental that you joined the family business. You watched your parents build this incredible business growing up. What was that like for you? And did you immediately know that you wanted to be part of it in some capacity?
So I'd say that I've always been extremely proud to see my parents, my father and my grandfather to begin with, and later my mom build the family business. And I think being part of the family, it's almost like an osmosis. It's not in your face. In our family, it was never in your face. In our family, it was always that do whatever you want in life, so long as you put in a lot of effort and hard work. Education was very important to both my parents. And they said, as long as you're happy and you put in your best, you can do whatever you want. There's no compulsion, there is no push for you to join the family business. Having said that, there are always subtle innuendos in terms of when we had so many people come home every day for different meetings. Come and sit with us. Why don't you meet so and so? And you'd overhear a few conversations. Then there would be conversations at the dinner table. Then there would be, oh, we have something happening at the office. Why don't you come over and have a look at it? So just very subtle and with no intention of pushing you in that direction. It was almost like we'd love to share with you what we're doing, and then it's up to you. And for me, I enjoyed the sciences, and so I did want to do engineering. So I didn't do it with the intention of joining the family business at all, but because I enjoyed it. And after I finished my engineering, I said, what can I do? What should I do? And to be honest, I had my husband, who's my husband today, in India. And so I wanted to come back to India and work there. So I just thought maybe I can try within Thermax. Another thing that my parents insisted on is if you want to come into Thermax, you have to start at the very bottom. And so I joined as a graduate engineer trainee with another 100 people that were joining in that year, and went through the same induction program, which was a year long, as any of the others that went through it. So I think it was, in a way, accidental, in a way, subtle. I don't know. I don't know what you would call it, but
We would call it reverse psychology, Meher. That's what we would
you're
call it.
absolutely right. Absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
So it's so interesting because then you're explaining how you then started at the bottom, but then I think we can all sort of agree. I guess the moment you joined Thermax, even as a trainee, in a way, there's a sort of a succession process that starts happening in everyone's mind, right? Like there might be family continuity on the horizon, but then for your family of martyr, of course, like you had 1996, a very painful and sudden death of your father that led to your mother taking over. And then in 2004, a very deliberate transition from your mother to you in terms of leadership. And if it's not too painful to you to talk about it, I'd love to get your sort of like maybe memories and impressions of, to contrasting those two moments, like when it happens suddenly and we are unprepared versus when there's this conscious transition happening, for the succession of the family enterprise and the leadership as well.
My father was really a true visionary and had grown the business into many, many different areas because India opened up in 1991. And so he saw huge opportunities for a company like ours, which was in energy and environment. But he saw opportunities even beyond that. And so he went into many, many diversified, unrelated businesses. And in 1995, we went public. And so we had yet one more stakeholder to look after. And then suddenly in 96, my father passed away. And so it was really very difficult for my mum, who luckily had joined the company, I think it was 8 years earlier, and was in human resources. Now, she had also joined under somebody who was the head of human resources and learnt under him for 5 years. And then when he left the company, she took over as the head of HR. And I think just knowing people within the organization gave her confidence to lead the organization at the time. And but of course, it was very difficult because not only was it a personal loss, but being at the helm of a publicly listed company is not something that one looks forward to without too much training. But I mean, my mom is an incredible woman. And so she came in and made a lot of changes, which in some ways it's strange, but my father didn't do. Of course, the company went through a downturn towards the end of 1990s. And so she had to close many businesses. We brought in a consultant to help us close many businesses, sell off a few businesses, ask people to leave, which we had never done in the history of the company except for integrity grounds. So it was really, really tough. And so I think she came in with a lot of trepidation in terms of how am I going to fill in the shoes of my husband. And a year later, my brother, who had come back from Venezuela, joined the company business and he passed away in a car accident. So that added, to the distress, huge distress within the family, but also just in terms of the organization and everything. And then you sort of fast forward, and I was there along with my husband to help her in many of the situations that we had been in, whether to turn around the business, working with the consultant that came in, having joined finance. I had been away for 4 years from 1992 to 96 with my husband in the UK to help turn around a small company that we had over here. So I had a variety of experiences, some deliberate and some because circumstantial. So in 96, when my father passed away, I had to come back to India. And suddenly, I mean, I hadn't planned for coming back, but suddenly we came back to India and I got into finance because I realized that it's important that I understand the financials of the organization. And then sort of moved around a little bit. So, in some ways, there was a lot more grooming in me than what my mom faced when she had to suddenly take over in 96. And yet, Ramya, in 2003, when my mom says, now I'm 61, next year I want to retire, I was just not ready for it. Just not ready. I had so many negatives, question marks. How will I be as good as my parents? How will I fit into their shoes? My mom's been so incredible and just not sure of myself. And again, being the tough woman that she is, she did two things. One is she announced it to the press that she's retiring the following year before she announced it within the family. The way she explains it, and I get it, today I get it, is that if I say it openly outside, I can't change my mind later. It becomes binding on me. Whereas if I told you, you would say, oh, mom, wait another 3 years, another 5 years, and then there would be
I would be convinced.
negotiations. And,
Yeah.
so it, and she had said to herself, that's it. I'm going to retire because she's a social worker by training. So she wanted to get back to her passion. And she felt that, okay, I think now is the time when Meher should rise up to the situation. The board had said that I need to take over. So it was really tough. And so what I did is I actually went for a program that she went to called Vipassana, which is a meditation program. And she went for the reason of losing her husband. And I went because I was just in such a dilemma. And she also came back to me and said, if you refuse, I will get someone from the outside. So that was another gun to the head, so to speak. And so I did come back after those 10 days of being totally immersed in my thoughts. And I said, I'll take it on. But it was not a happy situation when I did take it on. But today, I would say it's the best decision that we made.
So when you reflect back on that, like how did you manage those transitions together, I guess, emotionally as well? Like, what kind of conversations Did you consciously try to facilitate communication around these issues, or did you just let it unfold and everyone sort of like try to grow into it?
It was really tough at the time. And I think it was even more tough because when my brother passed away, we didn't really talk too much about it. And I remember when my brother passed away, the newspapers in India had reports Thermax's future CEO dies. Almost like there's no future for Thermax because the male heir has gone. And my mom was very sensitive to that. And I must say that I was very upset about that, obviously. I mean, being upset about my brother who's passed away and then these stupid newspaper cuttings. But my mom and I spoke about that, and she was very, very sensitive, and so was my husband. But we didn't really talk about his death very much. And I remember we were in London and it was her birthday, and I had given her a gift and I had left it next to her bedside table. And normally my mom is very, very effusive and comes and cuddles and, thank you and stuff like that. And she hadn't said anything the next morning. And I was really, really upset. And I think the whole thing just went out of proportion. And in some ways, we're such a close knit family, thankfully, that my husband intervened and said that, you have not been talking about this very, very important and event that has happened in the family. And I think it's time that you guys sit down and speak about it. And I think it was that day that we really, really talked about our emotions and how it's affected both of us. And ever since that day, it was like a huge relief. And it's been extremely, extremely helpful beyond that. Because in family businesses, the family dynamics is so, so important to get the best out of the business. If the family dynamics are not there, I don't think the business can do that well.
Thermax has been featured in a lot of case studies because of your focus on sustainability and your focus on the environment. When you took over, how did you sort of like become cognizant of this, and how did you start sort of like managing that and sort of like making sure that whatever happens to Thermax, that culture and that focus on sustainability
Remains. Right,
remains?
right.
Yeah.
So honestly, I didn't think that that was too difficult because Ramya, remember, as you rightly said, my father was very, very focused on efficiency improvements, on waste to energy, and energy in the form of heating, cooling, power. In some ways, the building blocks were already ingrained into the company. But I think when I came in, I felt very strongly about moving the organization more and more towards green. And that doesn't mean we don't do coal and we don't burn fossil fuels. No, we'll continue with that because in some ways that also gives you the bread and butter. Yeah, but we will push the strategies, the future strategies on green. So anything, if we had, say, for example, an M&A opportunity in fossil fuels, we would not look at that. We'd just say no. So we'd continue what we were doing, but the whole emphasis of the organization would be moved to green. This is something that my parents again had left as a legacy, is that the shareholder is but one stakeholder. They are not the only stakeholder. So to me, the share price is an outcome. And I always give this example. Still, a couple of my board members don't agree with me, but I have stuck to this very much, which is that if you're in a tennis game and you keep looking at the scoreboard, I don't think you'll give out the best to play that game well. But if you concentrate on the game, then the scoreboard will reflect the outcome of the game. And it's likely that it will reflect a better outcome. Similarly, the share price reflects what you're doing in business and what you truly believe is the purpose of your business. And so I keep telling our people, just concentrate on the business, concentrate on all your stakeholders, whether it's the planet, the community, anyone, employees, customers, whatever. and the share price will be the outcome. So don't worry about that. And I think that has helped us take good decisions.